The moment you hear the first blow, everything changes. Not just for Jesus, not just for the disciples, but for you. Because this is not the story you can watch from a distance anymore. This is the moment where faith is tested, where silence becomes louder than words, and where love begins to look like suffering. And once it starts, it does not stop. The episode opens with a feeling that something is wrong before anything even happens. There is no peace left in the air, no calm, just tension that feels heavy, like the world itself knows what is coming next. We are not stepping into a new beginning. We are stepping into the end of something sacred. And the most painful part is everyone close to Jesus can feel it, even if they do not fully understand it yet. Jesus is not surrounded by crowds anymore. The cheers, the miracles, the moments of hope, they feel far away now. What we see instead is quiet movement in the dark. Soldiers, torches, whispers, and then suddenly, the stillness breaks. The arrest begins. There is no dramatic warning, no time to prepare. It happens quickly, almost too quickly to process. One moment, Jesus is standing in calm silence, and the next, he is surrounded. The disciples are confused, shocked. Some of them freeze, some of them step back, and some of them cannot even believe this is real. Because how can this be happening to him? The man who healed, who taught, who loved without limits, now being treated like a criminal. And in the middle of all this chaos, Jesus does something that changes the entire tone of the episode. He does not resist. That is what makes this moment so powerful. He does not run. He does not fight. He does not even raise his voice. He simply allows it to happen. And that silence, that choice, is heavier than any scream could ever be. The disciples are breaking inside. You can feel it. They want to do something, anything, but they do not know what. Everything they believed about how this story would go is falling apart right in front of them. This was not supposed to happen like this. This was not the plan they imagined. And yet, Jesus looks at them, not with fear, but with something deeper. Almost like he is comforting them in the middle of his own arrest. That quiet strength is what makes this moment unbearable, because he understands what is happening, and they do not. As he is taken away, the distance between him and his followers begins to grow, not just physically, but emotionally. You can feel the separation, the fear, the confusion. Some of them start to follow from afar, not knowing what else to do. Others are too overwhelmed to move at all. And in that moment, you realize something important. This is where their faith begins to crack. The night feels longer than it should. Every step Jesus takes feels heavy, not because he is struggling, but because we know where it leads. The weight of what is coming is already present, even before the suffering truly begins. And then we reach the first moment that truly shakes everything. Jesus is brought before Annas. This is not a loud or chaotic scene. It is quiet, controlled, almost uncomfortable in how calm it feels. Two men in a room, one with power built over years, and one with a truth that cannot be destroyed. And yet, the tension between them is almost unbearable. Annas does not need to shout. He does not need to threaten. His authority speaks for him. He looks at Jesus not as a person, but as a problem that needs to be removed. And that is what makes him dangerous, because he has already decided the outcome before asking a single question. He begins to question Jesus, trying to trap him, trying to force him into saying something that can be used against him. But Jesus does not play that game. He does not twist his words. He does not defend himself in the way anyone else would. He simply speaks the truth, calm, clear, unshaken. And that calmness becomes almost unsettling, because it is not normal. It is not human in the way we expect. Anyone else in that situation would be afraid. Anyone else would try to escape. But Jesus stands there with a kind of peace that feels impossible. And that peace frustrates them because they cannot control it. Then it happens. A guard, unable to handle that calm presence, lashes out. He strikes Jesus. It is sudden, harsh, and it changes everything. The room feels different after that. The line has been crossed. This is no longer just an interrogation. This is the beginning of suffering. And even though it is just one moment, it carries the weight of everything that is about to follow. What makes it even harder to watch is how Jesus responds. He does not fight back. He does not react with anger. He does not even show hatred. He absorbs it. And in that moment, you begin to understand what this season is going to be. Not just pain, but chosen pain. Not just suffering, but suffering accepted with purpose. Outside, the disciples are already starting to fall apart. Some of them hear what happened, some of them see the aftermath, and none of them are ready for it. The man they followed, believed in, trusted with everything, is being hurt, and they can do nothing to stop it. That helplessness becomes the emotional core of this section, because it is not just about what is happening to Jesus, it is about what is happening to everyone who loves him. And as the night continues, one thing becomes clear. This is only the beginning. The night does not move forward. It sinks deeper. What began as confusion is now turning into something much heavier. Fear is no longer a possibility, it is reality. And the most unsettling part is that everything is happening so fast, yet it feels painfully slow at the same time. Every moment stretches, forcing you to sit inside it, to feel it, to not look away. After the encounter with Annas, Jesus is taken to face something even greater, the full weight of religious power. This is where the silence of the night is replaced with controlled chaos. Not loud chaos, not disorder, but something far more dangerous. A system already decided. A room where the outcome is known before the first word is spoken. Jesus is brought before Caiaphas and the council. This is not just a meeting, this is judgment disguised as justice. The people in that room are not ordinary men. These are leaders, scholars, figures who have spent their lives studying the law, teaching others, guiding a nation. And yet, what we see here is not wisdom. It is fear hiding behind authority. Because Jesus is not just a man to them. He is a threat, a truth they cannot control, and that truth terrifies them more than anything else. They begin the trial, if it can even be called that. Witnesses are brought forward one by one, but something feels off immediately. Their words do not match. Their stories contradict each other. It becomes obvious very quickly that this is not about finding truth. It is about creating a reason, any reason, and the more they try, the more desperate it becomes. There is a tension building in the room, not loud, not explosive, but suffocating. You can feel the frustration growing, because no matter how hard they try, they cannot build a case strong enough to justify what they already want to do. And in the center of it all, Jesus stands silent. He does not interrupt. He does not defend himself. He listens. And that silence again becomes powerful in a way that words could never be. It forces everyone in that room to sit with what they are doing. It exposes the weakness of their arguments without him having to say anything at all, but silence can only last so long. Caiaphas steps forward. This is the moment everything shifts. Up until now, they have been searching for something to use against Jesus. But now, Caiaphas changes the approach completely. He stops looking for evidence and goes straight to the heart of the matter. He asks the question everyone has been avoiding. Are you the Messiah? The room freezes. This is not just a question. It is a line drawn in the sand. Because everyone in that room knows exactly what the answer will mean. If Jesus says no, everything changes. If he says yes, everything ends. And for a brief moment, it feels like time itself stops. Jesus has been beaten, questioned, pushed, and still there is no fear in him, no hesitation, no attempt to escape the moment. He looks directly at Caiaphas, and he answers. Not loudly, not dramatically, but with complete certainty. You have said so, and you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power. That answer does not just fill the room. It breaks it, because it is not a denial. It is not a defense. It is a declaration. And the reaction is immediate. Caiaphas tears his robes, a symbol of outrage, but beneath that, there is something else. Not shock, not confusion, but confirmation. This is what they wanted. This is what they needed. Not truth, but justification. The council erupts. Voices rise, accusations fly. The word blasphemy spreads through the room like fire. And just like that, the decision is made. Not slowly, not carefully, instantly. Jesus is condemned. And what makes this moment so disturbing is how final it feels. There is no doubt in their actions, no hesitation, no second thought. The men who were meant to protect truth have chosen to destroy it. But the pain does not stop there. Once the decision is made, something darker begins to take over. The control, the formality, the structure of the trial, it starts to fall away. What replaces it is something raw, something cruel, the kind of behavior that does not come from law, but from emotion, from anger, from hatred. They begin to mock him. They blindfold him. They strike him. And every blow feels heavier than the last, because now it is no longer about proving anything. It is about breaking him. And still, he does not resist. That is what makes this part almost unbearable to watch. Not just the physical pain, but the complete lack of retaliation. He takes it. Every insult, every strike, every moment of humiliation, without fighting back. And it forces you to ask a question you do not want to ask. Why? Why endure this? Why allow it? And deep down, the answer begins to form, even if it is too painful to fully accept, because this was always the path. Outside, the world is falling apart in a different way. Peter is nearby, close enough to see pieces of what is happening, but far enough to pretend he is not part of it. The fear inside him is growing with every passing moment. This is not the story he thought he was part of. This is not the future he believed in. And then comes his test. People begin to recognize him. They ask questions. You were with him, weren't you? Simple words, but they hit like pressure building inside a breaking point. Peter has a choice in that moment. Stand with Jesus or protect himself. And he chooses fear. He denies it. Once, twice, 3 times. Each denial feels heavier than the one before. Because it is not just words. It is a fracture. A breaking of something inside him that he may never fully repair. And then the rooster crows. The sound cuts through everything. And in that moment, Peter realizes what he has done. There are no excuses left. No confusion, just truth. Painful, clear, undeniable truth. The man who swore loyalty has just walked away when it mattered most. And somewhere, not far away, Jesus knows. Not with anger, not with disappointment, but with understanding. And somehow, that makes it even more painful. Because this episode is not just about betrayal from enemies. It is about breaking from within. By the time this section ends, everything has changed. Jesus has been condemned. The leaders have made their choice. The disciples are scattered, afraid, lost. And the weight of what is coming next is no longer a question. It is inevitable. And the worst part, we are only getting started. By the time morning begins to rise, it does not feel like a new day. It feels like the continuation of something that should have never started. There is no sense of hope in the light, no relief, just exposure. What was done in the shadows is now being carried into the open, and somehow that makes it even heavier. Jesus is no longer just a prisoner of religious leaders. Now, he is handed over to Rome, and that changes everything. Because this is no longer about belief or blasphemy. This is about power, about politics, about control. And once Rome becomes involved, the situation moves into a world where truth matters far less than stability. Jesus is brought before Pontius Pilate. This moment is different from everything that came before it. The energy shifts again. Pilate is not like Annas. He is not like Caiaphas. He does not come into this with hatred or fear of losing religious control. He comes into this with something else: calculation. He is a man used to making decisions that affect lives, a man who understands authority, pressure, and consequence. And when Jesus is brought before him, Pilate does something unexpected. He looks at him, not as a threat, not as a criminal, but as a man, bruised, beaten, exhausted, but still standing with that same quiet strength that has defined every moment of this story so far. And Pilate sees it. That is what makes this interaction so uncomfortable, because Pilate knows something is wrong. He can feel it. This does not look like a man guilty of rebellion. This does not look like someone trying to overthrow Rome. This looks like someone being pushed into a fate he does not deserve. So Pilate begins to question him. Are you the king of the Jews? It is a political question, a dangerous one. Because if Jesus claims that title in a way that threatens Rome, then the outcome becomes simple. But Jesus answers the same way he always does: calm, direct, unafraid. You say that I am. It is not a denial. It is not a confession in the way Pilate expects. It is something deeper, something that does not fit into the categories Pilate understands. And that frustrates him, but also intrigues him. Pilate presses further, asking more questions, trying to understand who this man really is. But Jesus does not give him what he wants, not because he is hiding, but because the truth he carries cannot be explained in a way Pilate is ready to accept. And that creates tension, because now Pilate is stuck. On one side, he sees no reason to condemn Jesus. There is no clear crime, no real evidence, nothing that justifies execution. But on the other side, there is pressure. The religious leaders are not backing down. The crowd is beginning to gather. And Pilate knows how quickly situations like this can turn into chaos. So he tries to step away from the decision. He sends Jesus to Herod. At first, it seems like an escape, a way to pass responsibility to someone else. But in reality, it only deepens the situation. Herod is different from Pilate in every way that matters. Where Pilate is cautious, Herod is curious. Where Pilate is calculating, Herod is impulsive. And when Jesus is brought before him, Herod is almost excited. He has heard the stories, the miracles, the teachings, and now, finally, the man at the center of all of it is standing right in front of him. But what Herod wants is not truth. He wants entertainment. He begins asking questions, not with seriousness, but with expectation. He wants to see something, a sign, a miracle, something that proves all the stories he has heard are real. But Jesus gives him nothing. No answers, no reaction, no performance, just silence. And that silence becomes one of the most powerful moments in this entire section, because it says everything without saying anything. It shows that Jesus will not bend himself to satisfy curiosity. He will not turn his purpose into a spectacle. And Herod cannot handle that. The excitement turns into frustration, then into mockery. If Jesus will not prove himself, then Herod will turn him into a joke. He orders his men to dress Jesus in a robe, to treat him like a false king, to laugh at him, to strip away any sense of dignity that remains. And just like that, the situation becomes cruel again, not out of fear this time, but out of boredom and pride. When Herod is done, he sends Jesus back to Pilate. And now, everything comes full circle. Pilate is back where he started, except now, the pressure is worse, because the crowd has grown. The noise is louder. The demand is clearer. They want a decision. And Pilate knows he cannot avoid it anymore. He tries one last time to do the right thing. He tells the crowd that he finds no guilt in Jesus, that there is no reason to condemn him. But the crowd does not care about reason. They are not looking for justice. They are looking for an outcome. And their voices begin to rise, stronger, angrier, more unified. And Pilate begins to feel something he has been trying to avoid this entire time: fear. Not fear of Jesus, but fear of losing control. So he looks for another way out, and he finds it in tradition. There is a custom during Passover to release one prisoner chosen by the crowd. It is meant to be an act of mercy, a gesture of goodwill. And Pilate decides to use it as a solution. He brings out another man, Barabbas, a known criminal. A man who represents everything dangerous, everything violent, everything Rome actually fears. And Pilate presents the choice to the crowd, Jesus or Barabbas. In Pilate's mind, the decision should be obvious. It should be easy. But what happens next changes everything. The crowd chooses Barabbas, not quietly, not uncertainly, but loudly, confidently. They choose guilt over innocence, violence over peace. And in that moment, something breaks, because this is no longer just a trial. It is a revelation of how easily truth can be rejected, of how quickly fear and influence can shape a decision, of how a crowd can become something dangerous when it stops thinking and starts reacting. Pilate sees it. He understands it. And still, he gives in. He washes his hands, a symbolic act, a way of saying he is not responsible. But deep down, he knows that is not true, because the decision is still his, and he makes it. He orders Jesus to be crucified. The moment is quiet, but it echoes louder than anything that has come before it, because now there is no turning back. What was once a possibility is now certain. And as this section comes to an end, one truth stands above everything else. The world has made its choice, and Jesus is going to carry it. After the verdict is spoken, the world does not immediately react the way you expect it to. There is no sudden explosion, no dramatic collapse of order. Instead, there is something far more unsettling: normality. As if what has just been decided is simply another political outcome, another necessary step in maintaining control. And that is what makes it horrifying. Because for Jesus, nothing about this is normal. The sentence has been given, and now it must be carried out. Jesus is no longer standing before leaders and courts. He is no longer being questioned or debated. He is now being prepared for execution. And the shift in tone is immediate. Everything becomes colder, more procedural, less personal. And that is what makes it harder to watch. There is no more discussion about truth, only process. And the process begins with violence. He is handed over to the soldiers. And what follows is not just punishment, it is humiliation turned into entertainment. The guards mock him first, not because they fear him anymore, but because they have been given permission to treat him as nothing. A crown of thorns is placed on his head,